guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Isn't it interesting how we always end up discovering these little facts, not before the election, but always after? Months upon months of exposure to John Fetterman ahead of the 2022 midterm election. Those of us really digging in understood John Fetterman's current state of health, but the media, of course, refused to cover it, refused to inform the American people ahead of the election, refused to give them the relevant information that they needed. A lot of people were uninformed, a lot of people didn't understand just how truly damaged John Fetterman was after suffering a debilitating stroke.
What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.
Woo! It's good here. And the Eagles are so much better than the Eagles. No.
And we should all support replacing the lead pipes and ensuring that everyone has clean, safe, clean drinking water.
Of course, politics aside, it's a sensitive subject. Of course, it's quite rough, but it's relevant. It's always been relevant. And only now are we learning just how bad John Fetterman's health is and just how bad his stroke was. It just adds to reinforce my belief that John Fetterman is not fit for office. And it really shows how despicable these Democrats were who propped him up and continue to prop him up, even seemingly against his doctor's own advice. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so take a look at this headline right over here. Democrat Senator John Fetterman left with serious mental issues. Can't understand what people are saying following stroke. Senator John Fetterman, Democrat from Pennsylvania, has been left with serious mental health issues and often cannot understand the words that others are saying to him following the stroke that nearly killed him last year. Of course, that on its own isn't necessarily new information. I'm sure you guys remember this moment ahead of the election last year.
Another pivotal Senate race in Pennsylvania, now considered a toss-up. Our Dasha Burns spoke with Democrat John Fetterman in his first in-person sit-down interview since he suffered a stroke. And Dasha, this was not a typical candidate interview.
No, Lester, because of his stroke, Fetterman's campaign required closed captioning technology for this interview to essentially read our questions as we ask them. And Lester, in small talk before the interview, without captioning, it wasn't clear he was understanding our conversation.
Can voters trust that you will be able to do this job on day one?
Yeah, of course.
This is Pennsylvania Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman's first in-person sit-down interview since a stroke sidelined him from the campaign trail for months.
That auditory processing where I'll hear someone speaking, but sometimes I'll be able to be precise on what exactly that they're saying. I use captioning.
His campaign required that he be allowed to use a transcription program on his computer during our interview.
I always thought I was pretty empathetic, emphatic. I think I was very, empathetic. That's an example of the stroke, empathetic.
Yeah. We already understood that John Fetterman was struggling to communicate. He was struggling to understand and be able to grasp what people were saying. But now we're learning just how bad it really is. The New York Times reported that Fetterman has to use live audio to text transcription for everything that he does. The report said that Fetterman's struggles are significantly worse when he is under any kind of stress. Fetterman has indicated that when he's under stress, trying to understand what other people are saying is like trying to make out the muffled voice of the teacher in the Peanuts cartoon, whose words could never be deciphered, the report said. I'm sure everyone has heard it before, but for those of you guys who aren't aware of the analogy, who aren't aware of the teacher from Peanuts, I guess we'll just play a little snippet. Now that little added level of perspective takes it to a whole other level. He doesn't understand what anyone is saying to him. And this is now a sitting US senator. I mean, if we're having a conversation of being fit for office, I feel like this probably fits the definition of being unfit for office. How can you serve your people if you literally cannot communicate? And how can you justify Democrats putting this guy in the spotlight after facing a near fatal stroke? Again, we're getting added perspective here. The report noted that the stroke last year has taken a very very real psychological toll on him, and that he has had to come to terms with the fact that he may have to set himself back permanently by not taking the recommended amount of rest during the campaign. So we're now learning that John Fetterman's stroke was, quote, near fatal, and that the reports that we were receiving during the campaign season, that John Fetterman's doctor had given him a clean bill of health and essentially given him the green light to run his campaign, we're learning that that report may not have been entirely accurate. It seems as though doctors had some serious issues with John Fetterman keeping up with a rigorous campaign schedule. Yet the media reported that he had a clean bill of health, he was good to go, nothing to see here, and they hid the truth from the American public. And now it gets even worse. Senator John Fetterman has been released from a Washington, D.C. hospital after being admitted due to feeling, quote, lightheaded and undergoing tests earlier this week, according to a statement from his office. The results of the MRI, along with the results of all other tests the doctors ran, rule out a new stroke, Calvello said at the time. And so John Fetterman was admitted to a hospital, but again, he was released with a supposed clean bill of health. The question that I'm asking myself is, maybe he has a clean bill of health this time, but again, clearly this man isn't fit for office. For Pete's sakes, the man might lose his life. He suffered a near fatal stroke and has almost completely lost his cognitive ability. He should probably be at home resting, recuperating, and trying to get back to his full self, but instead, he's working a relatively demanding and stressful job, and it's probably going to get even worse when he has to run for re-election. It all just seems highly unethical. At the end of the day, of course, he has the freedom to do what he wants, and most likely it's coming from John Fetterman, who wants to run and continue what he's doing regardless of what anybody says. But I feel like if you understand the facts here of the current state of John Fetterman's health, it would simply be unethical to vote him in a position of power, yet that's exactly what Democrats did. It's completely absurd, and it's almost as if the writing is on the wall, and it's only a matter of time before we receive another report that John Fetterman's in the hospital again. And ironically enough, it seems like only Republicans are the ones concerned about this man's health. Democrats couldn't care less. They'd rather have the Senate majority. It's a friggin' disaster. It's not only unbelievable that nobody stopped this man from running, but it's unbelievable that Dr. Oz couldn't frickin' win. And actually mentioning that, where is Dr. Oz? Supposedly the guy's a real true blood conservative, but notice how he's completely disappeared, dropped off the map. For a man who declared that he cared so much about the people and cared so much about the state of Pennsylvania and the future of the Republican Party and conservatism, you'd think he'd still be involved in politics and still be fighting, kind of like Carrie Lake. Clearly for Dr. Oz, it was always about Dr. Oz and nothing else. His public image, his legacy, his title. He shat the bed in the election and basically disappeared. And now American voters are stuck with this guy, a man who clearly cannot do the job that he's been elected to, a man who should not be in office. I mean, for Pete's sakes, the man's life is literally in danger. This job could literally be fatal for John Fetterman. It's all around a bad deal for pretty much everyone. It's bad for John Fetterman and it's bad for the people that he represents. And it's yet again, of course, another example of Democrat hypocrisy. The ethically superior, compassionate Democrats sent a sick man to the Senate. He landed in the hospital again last week and nobody seems to care. It's all just so ridiculous. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Of course, you know, like I always say, we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.